Movie villains of the 90s were iconically bold, unapologetically over the top, and they were really memorable, which is clearly evolved into a more cartoon-like anti-hero villain of today's plotline. Again and again, we see an anti-hero with a backstory that you can vibe with, and the hero is pushed to the side. It's clear, the 90s gave us some of the most unforgettable, iconic scenes. How that's compared with today's villains? Well, now, today's villains are more nuanced, complicated, and perhaps even more human and generally less evil. Did it get better or worse? You be the judge. I'll present both sides and we'll get into it more. So join me as we dive into the evolution of movie villains, from past to modern day. Let's go.
Help her!
Wait here.
Hurry up! Hurry up! Kill us all! They'll kill us all!
Homer!
They'll kill us all!
To start, in the past, villains were definitely larger than life with grandiose ideas and wild plans, and this made them memorable. They weren't just characters, they were forces of nature with a plan and character that had a clear form or evil charisma. They were bad dudes. For example, Hans Gruber's suave and calculating demeanor in Die Hard, or the T-1000's unstoppable menace. 90s villains had one goal: to dominate the screen. Looking at Die Hard, Hans Gruber, played by the legendary Alan Rickman, came with a gang and backstory that was plausible for the tone of a sophisticated money-stealing villain. He wasn't simply a thief, he was a mastermind with followers and witty charisma to think on his feet. A true villain, he wanted to accomplish his goals, obtain a vast amount of money, and had planned for all circumstances, including losses and contingencies. He was relentless, this gave the character depth. It was formulated in his mind that there would be death and sacrifice, and he would do anything to accomplish a goal.
I'm going to count to 3.
Yeah, like you did with Takagi. Oops.
Similarly, in Terminator, Robert Patrick's T-1000 terrified audiences with his cold, mechanical efficiency for evil, working as a perfect counter to Arnold Schwarzenegger's heroic Terminator. He was obviously the other side of the coin, hero versus evil, not an anti-hero. Meticulously attacking and hounding Sarah Connor like prey, there was a clear, sharp duality in these movies of good versus evil, cop versus thief, good versus bad. Another great example is Demolition Man, starring Wesley Snipes as Simon Phoenix. A thug so over the top he was as entertaining as he was dangerous. Demolition Man embodies the chaotic yet meaningful energy that defined many 90s action films, with excellent satire, pacing, and a gripping sci-fi storyline. The larger-than-life plotlines that tied into story arcs which were grounded in the dystopian lore of the movie. There was reason to the chaos, beyond just a surface level. There's the timeline of Los Angeles, and the utopian society they're building in Demolition Man. The writing included the innocence, the evil, the polar opposites, and made it simple to digest. They didn't need overly complex backstories beyond their status in the movie. These movies have their timeline. They were there to challenge the hero, to make us cheer when justice prevailed. Their simplicity was their strength. They were memorable because they didn't try to be relatable with anything other than an idea. The villains existed in those movies as the opposite of good. The purpose was set there and worked well. Moving forward to today, the concept of heroes and villains has definitely evolved. Although, while they are still memorable and larger than life, one noticeable difference is modern villains are no longer just evil for the sake of being evil. They're more nuanced, morally ambiguous, and sometimes even sympathetic, making them an anti-hero. This confuses things and blurs the lines between good and evil. Now, is that for better or worse? Take Thanos, for example. In Avengers: Infinity War, he isn't just a conqueror, he's a philosopher with a twisted sense of duty. His belief in balance drives his actions, making him a villain you can almost understand. Even if you disagree with him, there's more sense to him. Then there's Killmonger from Black Panther. His anger stems from real pain and injustice, and his actions force both the audience and the hero to confront uncomfortable truths about the world. It's more thought-provoking and empathetic than in the 90s, when they were evil and you knew damn well what they were. There's more going on in these movies which dilutes the story and makes it not so clean-cut. One prime example is the Joker. Joaquin Phoenix's portrayal really switched it up and redefined the character in the movie. Instead of a mastermind or using brute force, we see a deeply flawed and mentally ill man pushed to the brink of societal neglect. We empathize with him. We see his pain, his actions, while horrifying, make us reflect on systemic failures and the thin line between victims and villains. It's more thought-provoking, it's more of a reflection on life. It's art and it's definitely a new level, but should it be a new standard overall, or just exist for its purpose of being the Joker and expressing that? It's clear that a wide range of movies like The Joker and American Psycho definitely need to exist, and so do movies with polar opposites like Terminator and Demolition Man. Taking all this into account, how have villains evolved? Well, today's villains make us think more, and maybe that's what producers feel makes them terrifying. Their complexity mirrors the complexities of our own world, challenging us to see shades of grey instead of black and white. Maybe our world has changed, or maybe it hasn't. It's just movies want us to feel for the anti-hero and be less heroic in general. Because in reality, although there are varying shades of grey to every story, evil is evil, and that was what was simple about 90s movies. Should a bad guy have a likable backstory, and should we emphasize with him, or just see him for what he is? Bad, evil, a villain. The duality is blended, and some may find that a nice nuance, or others may argue it blurs the definitions and makes the movie bland and less memorable, because they can't root for the hero as much, and it's just a long montage of actor versus actor rather than good versus evil. So why have villains changed so much? Part of it may be wanting to be new, part of it may be influenced from funding sources or being tamer to guess the audience instead of being a maverick. As movie culture has grown through the decades, studios may feel as moviegoers we've grown more sophisticated. We crave stories that challenge our perspectives and villains who feel real. With the success of Catch Me If You Can and The Wolf of Wall Street, villains are portrayed more as real stories of people who have a backstory, and this may have influenced producers to want a more real-world villain instead of a fantasy story. This is a strange observation, as both movies feature true criminals, which did bad things. Their stories may be extremely interesting, but we know that these criminals have defrauded people. They had genuine ill intent and served time for that. It's a reflection on society, and once we take into account their backstory, it's making them the center stage. The story's context has changed to reflect the real world, that it's more complicated than just a bad guy. It's a bad guy with feelings that we can relate to. In the 90s, writers and producers loved to display a clear-cut battle between good and evil, but as shows evolved, so did our expectations. A definite turning point was made in The Sopranos, and then more recently Breaking Bad, which introduced complex anti-heroes, proving that audiences could handle moral grey areas and loved to watch the content. Filmmakers began to explore villains as reflections of societal issues, whether it's Thanos representing overpopulation fears or Killmonger highlighting systemic oppression. Does this shift mirror our own growing awareness of the complexities of the world around us, or is this something producers wanted us to be more aware to? The rise of anti-heroes like Tony Soprano and Walter White, Frank Abagnale and Jordan Belfort also blurred the lines between hero and villain. Producers feel that audiences are no longer satisfied with just good versus evil as much. They figure we want to understand the why, and we want to know the backstory and to give these characters redemption. So here's the question. Is this an improvement? Are modern villains better? Or have we lost some of the imagination, the fun and intensity that made 90s villains so iconic? Leave a comment below with what you think. I'd love to know. You see, on one hand, 90s villains brought a level of excitement and spectacle that's hard to replicate. This simplicity made them instantly recognizable, memorable, and evilly insane. Whereas on the other hand, modern villains challenge us to think and feel in ways that 90s villains rarely did. It's really about emphasizing their situation more. As eras change, maybe it's not about which is better, but about appreciating how each era reflects its time, or maybe we need to go back more to the days of polar opposites, the sheriff and the bandits, the cop and the thief, good versus evil. So now it's your turn. Who do you think wins here? How do you like your villains? Is it a clean-cut issue for you? Have movies got progressively worse due to the general trend of humanizing villainous characters and downgrading the importance of heroes in place of anti-heroes? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear your take. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more deep dives into movies and entertainment culture. It really helps our channel. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again soon.